want.
Now, some of you may remember that I had a marvellous chat with Kit of Kit's World a few weeks ago, and we talked about the struggles of newbie booktubers. And many of you really related to what we talked about. And I wonder how many of you can relate to this week's bookish struggle. Now, recently I read Barchester Towers, and somewhere along the way I realised that I wasn't reading it because I liked it. I was reading it because of its pedigree. In other words, I was reading it because I wanted other people, particularly other booktubers, to think that I'm well read and that I'm smart and that I'm all that and a bag of chips, right? Okay. So yeah, I realised that I was being a pretentious git, and I can't stand literary pretension. And that's what Isabella and I are just chatting with today. Isabella, if you don't know, never shows herself on the screen. She is the person behind the camera, and I am the face of the font, right? But she's going to just drop in a few comments here and there so that I don't have to listen to my own voice for extended periods and freak myself out in that manner. So Isabella, have you ever read a book or watched a movie or looked at some art, not because you consciously chose to, but because you wanted to impress other people?
Oh, absolutely. I think all of us have at some point in time done that too.
I agree, and it's really hard not to. And one of the things that I've noticed is that booktubers over a period of time, some of them, particularly the ones that are up to a year old, will change their content to become more literary, or in some way I feel that they are fitting their reading choices to fit the expectations of others. So I was really interested to see that, as an example, the books that I was reading became Barchester Towers, right? Mordew, Alex Phoebe, that is literary fantasy, and I just really don't read fantasy. The Magic Mountain. As I have come to this point of being a booktuber, I found myself actually doing that. I have a substantial list here of books that I read that were outside my usual choice of books. And that actually has been something that I've noticed in the last, say, 3 months or so. Why do you think we do it, Isabella?
I think it changes depending on sort of who you are. So I think for you, these are titles that hold, like I said before, they hold literary clout.
Literary clout.
Yeah, they hold literary clout.
Exactly
They're big
right.
names.
I wasn't thinking that when I chose them,
Yeah.
but that's exactly right. Literary clout. Like I'm like, this is how common I am. Like Anthony Trollope, or is it pronounced Trollope? I don't friggin' know. But it sounds nice. He's got his own literary society of people who read him, so he must be pretty flash, and I'm going to read him. And actually, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't a terrible read, like I said. But what annoyed me was that I didn't choose that. That book chose me. The clout around it chose me. I was like, oh. Why do you think we do it though, Isabella?
Well, I know for me personally, I will want to read books because people recommend them to me.
Yep.
And they're like, here, read this book. You're gonna really enjoy it. It's gonna mean a lot to you.
Yep.
And it's relevant to you and all this stuff. But I just don't want to.
Yep.
Bro, I like reading my YA fun novels.
And what was a book that you read that was exactly not a reflection of that? It was?
1984.
1984, right? So your 1984 is like, for instance, which one I'm looking down my list? Love After Love by Ingrid Pessoa. Now, that one debut novel for the Costas, and deservedly so, but it's not my jam because it's got a whole lot of really, that carpet scrapey kind of sex in it, which I don't particularly like. It just doesn't appeal to my taste, right? But The reason, Isabella, that I think that I did that was insecurity. And that insecurity, I believe, comes from shame. Now, I'm not saying booktubers shame. I would never even watch booktubers that shamed others for their book choice. What I'm talking about is that progression through our lives that starts from whenever and causes us to feel embarrassed because of what we haven't read or what people think we should read. And my example is that I work in retail, which has nothing to do with books, and people don't know that I have a degree in English literature. They don't know how much I read. They don't know. They just see me as just this bird that does stuff for them, right? And I had a customer come in and she had a book. It was a literary book. I can't remember which one, but it was a literary book, right? And I said, that's very interesting. What are you reading there? And she said to me, she said, oh, you wouldn't be interested. And what she was saying was that I wouldn't understand or what she was reading, or that it was not to my taste because of who she perceived I was, which was a counter chick, I suppose. And can I tell you, the shame that came from that was just, oh, it was a horrible feeling. Isabel, have you ever had anything like that?
Yeah, I have actually. I remember reading Rita Hayworth.
Yeah, Stephen King, I know the one.
And The Shawshank Redemption in high school.
Which actually is a very good story.
I loved that novella.
Sure.
I loved it.
Yep.
And I remember my English teacher at the time, who I held in quite high regard. It wasn't until much later that I realised he was not the best. You know which one I'm talking about. And he's like, oh yeah, what are you reading? And I told him, and he's like, oh, you know, it's all ghostwritten. It's not even a real writer. Like, it's fake. It's all ghostwritten.
Yeah.
Like,
so, okay,
right, just
how does you feel?
Yeah,
you feel bad. It's a yuck feeling, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
And because it's to do with shame, which is one of those emotions that you don't want to feel. Like, you can feel anger or you can feel sad, but nobody wants to touch shame. That creates a really awful pattern of behavior, and it's unconscious behavior.
Well, what I think as well is that especially people my sort of age are expected to evolve their reading as they mature as well. So to move on from like the little chapter books up to like YA and then move into proper literary works and like Shakespeare and you know, Dr. Zhivago, stuff like that. You're expected to progress, but like, what if you don't want to? What if that's not what you want to read? You feel this shame because you feel like you're not growing up in a literary sense.
100%. And if you take that to booktube, where you are expected to perform and it's performance, because that's what we're doing in front of the camera, but we really want to impress. And the last thing we want to have is that horrible feeling of shame that, oh, they're not going to think that I'm knowledgeable in reading or my book choice isn't elevated enough. So that's really interesting to me. The next point that comes to mind is this, all right? Without the expectation of others, right, would we read at a lower level? Would we drop the bar on what we're reading? Would we be bothered to read challenging books? Because I think that's an important question, Isabella. I mean, do you think that without the pressure, that expectation of others, or our perception of the expectation of others, would we read good books?
I think that there are a lot of factors that go into it. Considering BookTube, that creates its own kind of pressure, and if you're getting to a point where you're reading purely for BookTube, if that pressure's taken away, you're just gonna stop. It reminds me very much of when you were telling me that story of how you studied literature in university, and then once that pressure to read at university was taken away, you didn't read for years. It was only much, much later on that you started to read again because you enjoyed it.
Yes, that's right. That is really interesting because of that pressure to perform. And I was reading at university level books that just weren't interesting to me. Yeah, when I was released from that, it took me a long time to get back to reading. However, having said that, yeah, when I returned to reading, I was reading books that really interested me. And interestingly, when I realized, and this is very recent, I actually had a completely different thing that I was supposed to do for today. I had an entire script ready talking about actually making fun of literary pretentious people that would read things like Barchester Towers and how you could respond to them by having read it yourself. And I had all these tips on how to read it properly and, you know, all this information about it. And then I realized I'm the pretentious git. The moment I realized that, almost immediately after, my next choice in books was completely different. It was much more in line with what I normally would be interested in. So, jury's out. I don't ever think that anything that's born of shame or pressure or the expectations of others is going to serve your book choices well.
Absolutely.
And yes, and inauthentic, not authentic. 4 years at university studying English. Something that's not authentic. Inauthentic, pretty sure. Anyway, look, that is dangerous territory, and you don't want to swim in those inauthentic waters for long because you lose your sense of you.
Yeah.
Very tricky. So, Isabella, this one's an interesting one. We think that we have struggles as a small booktube channel, right? But we've got a few hundred. You know, the big booktubers, they've got a few thousand. And everyone gets along because, you know, we all do. We're all really supportive of one another. And the world's not going to end if I choose to do Stephanie Meyer next week. You know, they'll go, oh yeah, well, Barb's having a thing. Oh, I'm going to do Marie Kondo. Why not? Later. Doesn't matter. What if you are the Duchess of Cornwall, right? So we've got Camilla. Her mother-in-law is the Queen. How do you think you'd go choosing books for a channel? Do you think you could make an authentic job of choosing books if you are the Duchess of Cornwall and her book club?
Well, she's not the only significant public figure to have a book club. Oprah has a book club. Yep. Florence Welsh from Florence and the Machine, one of my favorite music artists, she also has a book club.
Yeah.
And I think the sort of level of dedication varies. I reckon that the Duchess of Cornwall has a team of people to help her pick out books.
I'm telling you, you know what she does? I'm telling you what she does. She has got books romping with the corgis, knitting jumpers through the ages.
Do you reckon she's got Marie Kondo on that list?
Oh yes, safe books, right? There's the Queen. She goes,
Yeah.
oh look at me!
Safe
Oh,
books. Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
volume 3 of Romping with the Corgis. It's I've lent it to you, Mom. It is compelling, right?
Yeah.
and on the inside, she's got like Ingrid Passard, and she's got like, oh, this homosexual sex is really gorgeous, isn't it? Charles. Flappies, come over here, darling. It's a very, very good book. It's got literary acclaim. It won an award, this Costa Award. Charles Flappies, come over here. Look at this. Anyway, you know.
Yeah.
So perhaps we finish on that note because I think that makes me feel a lot better.
But like you joke about it, but people that are dedicated will use their platform to open the minds of others. So like I mentioned, Florence Welsh has her own book club.
Sure.
She uses that book club to sort of expose people to strong feminist literature.
Right.
So it is it's a jokey thing for some people, but it is its own platform. Like, and you got to respect that.
You know what? That's really well said. You know what? I think that, you know, if you've got something to say, just bloody find books that to say it, but don't, as long as it's not pressure. I think, Isabella,
Yes.
you know what, even having realized this ridiculous thing that I've been forcing myself to read books that I don't, you know, that just, they're not relatable to me, right? Just taking that pressure away, I'm much happier. I've just been reading books all day today, just enjoying it, you know?
Yeah.
Perhaps if we all remember to breathe a little bit and stay true to ourselves and our own literary taste or bookish taste, whatever it is that you like to read, you know, I think that's the happiest. Look, you know, do you think that would cause us to lose subscribers if say, for instance, you know, if we changed the books that we had?
It just depends on sort of where the channel is coming from. Like if you're doing the channel purely for the clout and for the subscribers and for the numbers, and like you're gonna lose numbers. But if you're doing it because you want to share books that have influenced you with other people, then you know the numbers the numbers might drop, but the ones that will stay are the ones that genuinely
I agree. I know that I laughed about that, but
yes.
I'm rehabilitated. I no longer hover over the numbers.
Actually, you're much better than you were before.
Your face is another who's
I'm here to speak the truth.
Oh my god. Anyway, I think that to end on a positive note, or perhaps, you know, on a, what do you call it, wise note? I don't know. Perhaps if we all just stay true to our initial intentions of why we read, or what we choose to read, then we'll be okay. But if we loop ourselves into trying to please others, things can get pretty unhappy there. Yeah, so I really hope that you have some happy reading. Really happy reading. And bloody read what you want to read, right? Just
absolutely.
Read. I'll subscribe to you any hoot. No, let me leave my usual ridiculous comments on your channel. All right. Well, we will see you next time. I think that it's time for a tag next time, just quietly, and you know what the font tags are like. So definitely tune in next time, and hit the like if you want to. No pressure. I don't like to make pressure. See you later. Bye.